Skank is sees T-Bird being taken away by Brandon's character, and he runs. He wants to go and help, but these two kids come in and hold up the store, and this was like one of the key scenes that we had to drop for ratings reasons, because it was it broke the
I'm your passenger.
The law that says you can never have kids brandishing weapons in an American movie. And to me, it was just so over the top that it was actually kind of funny that these like little kids come in and sort of mess up this sort of, hoodlum's life, and actually, in fact, the scene ended up with him being shot in the arm as a result. It was actually, I always found it amusing, but I guess a lot of people don't share my sense of humour.
What do you want, man? Money? Drugs? I got it. I can use you. You did Tintin. This is business, right?
Faster.
The interesting thing about this car chase is that most of it's done with miniatures. Most of the shots of the cars driving down alleyways, and some you can tell more than others, like that's a miniature shot there. That's real. That's a miniature. And a lot of times you can really tell. And again, it was kind of a stylistic decision, but it was also the fact that I didn't have enough money to shoot a car chase, and the street that we had in Wilmington, the back lot, was just not big enough to stage a car chase. The cars could barely get up to speed before they'd have to slow down before hitting the styrofoam wall at the end of the set. So really the only way of getting them all up to speed was to shoot the occasional wide shot as a model. And you kind of get away with it, I suppose. It was interesting to see though, I remember specifically one of the Batman movies that came in the wake of The Crow. I can't remember which one it was. They kind of reproduced a lot of these angles, but for real. They actually did it with real cars, and it's quite amusing to see this, what we had sort of done for budgetary reasons was sort of used as a stylistic flourish on a grand scale in a really expensive movie. Yeah, it cuts around really quickly, and some of the miniature shots, if you blink, you miss them. But yeah, in that particular crash sequence, there were one or two miniature shots. I remember when we crashed those cars, they didn't slide as far as I wanted them to, and we couldn't afford to do a second take. So my way of fixing that was to shoot the actual slide in miniature, and cut that into the middle of the sequence, so it actually looked like the cars slid a lot further than they actually did. No. It was really just desperation more than sort of planned. More than planning. It was just how do you pick up the pieces and make something work when you didn't have the money to get it right the first time around.
What? What do you want? What is it? What? Speak to me! Speak! Did you send us these complaints? Come here. Abashed, the devil stood. Does it get you sweating? I know you. I know you. I knew you.
There's literally no CGI in the entire movie. It's all done in there are a few digital shots, but there's no real. I mean, I guess the only CGI we had really was probably the wound healing, but that's a real. Well, it's not a real car. It's actually a fiberglass shell over a chassis, and like so many of the action sequences in the film, it didn't really work in the way it was intended, and again, due to lack of budget and time, and the car actually does a flip, which was never really intended. It was designed to sail probably about 100 metres out into this lake, and it sort of basically blew up as soon as it came off the dock, which was substantially earlier than I wanted it to. And fortunately, the cameramen who were on all the cameras were quick enough to manage to capture it, because I don't know what we would have done. I think we would have been doing another miniature shoot at that stage if that hadn't been grabbed on the day. That shot, the bird shot in the flaming silhouette shot, was actually done for real. That actually worked magnificently well when we shot it. It was a groove cut into the ground, a very thin groove with a very small amount of some sort of inflammable liquid, and it was basically lit, and it actually worked, surprisingly, for the first take.
This is the 7 a.m. edition of Action News. For over a decade, the night before Halloween has had a darker and deadlier nickname in the inner city, Devil's Night, the name given to what has become an annual plague of arson. Last year, 200 individual blazes were reported and 11 people lost their lives.
But no, Anna was just a great sort of... there's a sort of, vulnerability. I mean, saying it's a vulnerability is almost a cliche, I suppose, but there is this wonderful tenderness about her character, and I think that's really what appealed to me. I mean, again, it's like, what her character is doing in this film kind of really sucks big time. She's not someone that anyone in their right mind would actually warm to, but you do because of the way she's played. That was really down to Anna pulling that off, really, because that's really kind of one of those roles you read on the page and you go, well, how will we ever invest any emotion in this character? But I think somehow she made it work. A lot of the times I'm doing things that I don't even actually realise I'm going for what feels right, and I don't realise exactly why I'm doing that, but there seems to be some logic to why I'm doing it, and I often see that afterwards. And so often the actors push you into a certain way of doing things. I remember when I first started as a filmmaker, because I was always into composition and framing, I would try and impose on the actors where they should stand and what they should do. I really didn't understand that that's not really the way to work with actors. And it always felt uncomfortable for me if an actor suggested that perhaps they move 3 steps rather than 2 steps in a scene, and because I would play it all out in my head before I arrived on the set, and I would feel that it should be done exactly in that way, and things were storyboarded accordingly. But obviously, you realise over the years that that's not the most effective way of doing it. So I tend to go from a very structured way of composing and framing, and it's usually with things that I can predict, not the actors. If it's an action sequence, you have to structure very, very tightly because you can predict what's going to happen. With the actors, you can never do that, and in fact, not being able to predict what they're doing is the whole key of capturing something terrific. So then I tend to use more psychological methods with the actors. I tend to, if I want them configured in a certain way for a shot for an emotional reason, I will almost design the set to force them to stand in a certain place. So they kind of feel like they're making all their own decisions, but perhaps I'm having something to do with those decisions. Convincing people that Shelley is the love of Eric's life is, I don't know that we managed to be completely convincing with that. We had very little material to work with. We had very little stuff at our disposal. And this was a part of the movie for me that was the most difficult in many ways to achieve, because in the comic book, it's so broad and it's so extreme, but it kind of has to be because, again, it's like the whole through line of this character. It's why he's doing what he's doing, and it was tough to convince I don't know that I'm fully convinced when I see the film, in those very quick flashes and those little images, that there is this totally real emotional relationship between